never wanted to leave India.
They sort of relied too heavily on Mahindra, didn't have a plan B.
Fortuna's ruling the roost. The only one that could really give it somewhat of a fight was the Endeavour.
It's a brand that people, I think, will welcome with open arms.
We are here to stay. We're coming back with a plan. Hello and welcome to Deep Drive, our weekly podcast on all that's hot and happening in the auto industry. Now, on this week's show, we are going to be talking about Ford and its potential comeback to India. Now, Ford hasn't officially announced that they're coming back to India, but there are lots of signs that they are. And to talk about this, I have with me Sergius Barretto, our managing editor. Sergius, Ford coming back, I think it's a moment to rejoice because a lot of Ford fans out there, including ourselves.
Absolutely. I think you said that right. There's a lot of fans out there. It's a brand that people, I think, will welcome with open arms. There'll be no, ill will towards the brand having exited or stopped sales because technically they were still here in India, right, all along. So, yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, Hormazd, before we get deeper into the signs as to why they are coming back, or it seems like they're coming back, why did they leave in the first place? I mean, what happened?
Well, I think Ford is one of those companies, unlike GM, which decided, yes, we want to exit the Indian market. We can't hack it over here. The other places we want to put our resources. Electrification was just happening. That's where they wanted to focus. But Ford really never wanted to leave India. It was the failed partnership with Mahindra that forced them to. Now, why did it force them to? Because they had gone a long way on the understanding that they would be producing products together. And at the last minute, the partnership fell through and it came with certain emission regulation changes. So basically what Ford had were a whole bunch of products that weren't compliant with regulations. And you need at least 18 months or 24 months to get them to be compliant. In fact, Ford hadn't even worked on their small capacity engines for cars like the EcoSport and Aspire because they were planning to do that with Mahindra. They were planning to use Mahindra's 1.2 engine, which that never happened. And it's really unfortunate, actually, because, it could have been a good partnership. But I think at the end of the day, both partners had issues with each other. We've done a big story on this. You can see it on Autocar Pro. We are putting up the link for you over there because it is an interesting story on actually what happened. We really got inside both companies to figure out. And I think clearly there were trust issues at the end. I think from Ford's point of view, after the change in management, when Dr. Pawan Goenka went and Anish Shah came in, he was looking at things in a more kind of with a beady eye. Does it really make sense? Clearly, Ford felt that Mahindra were kind of having some unrealistic scenarios for the sharing of the XUV 700, the C SUV, which wasn't working out for Ford. From Mahindra's point of view, they found that Ford had put certain caps on investment. Now, that's really a red flag because, in this, you can't put a cap on investment. You've got to invest what it takes. So that meant beyond a point, Ford would dilute itself and leave Mahindra holding the can, which was Mahindra's standpoint. But clearly, I think from Ford's point of view, there were issues that could have been resolved, but Mahindra at that time had made up its mind that they wanted to not go ahead. So really, that's what happened. But I think so. They were really forced out, but if you look at it, and you've seen, they kept advertising, and in our magazine on service to kind of at least tell their customers, look, we may not be manufacturing India, but we are still here to support our existing customers.
Yeah, I think, in fact, when they not left, because when they stopped manufacturing or announced that they would stop manufacturing, they were very clear. They said that, look, this is only to say that we're stopping to make cars here. We will continue to service them. We may even sell CBUs, as we know, when they exited, they kind of said that, things like the Mark E and, CBUs could carry on sales. So, yeah, you're right. I think you said it perfectly that they didn't really want to exit the market. They were kind of forced out, but
yeah, they had no choice.
Yeah, they had no
products that could be compliant. So if you don't have that, what do you do?
But I think also, the other thing for me which struck me is one is, they sort of relied too heavily on Mahindra. Didn't have a plan B. What if Mahindra pulled the plug? We should maybe update our products. But also the products themselves. I mean, they chased the sub 4 meter rule. With so many cars, they had the Figo. They chased Maruti essentially.
Correct. I think that was a big mistake.
Yeah, I mean, SUVs. It's what Ford does so well. They just somehow didn't see that in India. chased Maruti, ended up in a situation where, they just...
And they were trying to compete on cost of ownership. Exactly. They did well, but people just didn't have that perception, which, whatever it is, Maruti would always have that perception of being cheaper to maintain.
True. Exactly. And you're right. They did well. They frankly did very well. I mean, I remember on some of our studies that we did, they were the cheapest in their segments, but it was I think it was a wrongly chased target, if we could put it that way. There's no point chasing that target, right?
Yeah, or let's say a wrongly chased, kind of positioning of their brand.
True.
Because, you want to position yourself, Fords are fun to drive, Fords have a little bit more aspirations.
True.
And you're right, going back with, with going after Maruti, definitely didn't work at all.
So, speaking products, Hormazd, but and signs, like you said earlier, they haven't announced that they're coming back, but there are many signs. So I think one was, what probably sparked off all this was the plant, right? They suddenly decided not to sell the plant. So why don't you tell us something about that?
That's right. I mean, they sold off the Sanand plant to Tata Motors.
Right.
And again, I want to talk about the Sanand plant, which is really one of Ford's follies. They built a Taj Mahal where they needn't have. It was super, super expensive. Just to let you know, something like a forklift, which was to Ford standards, would be about 7 times more expensive than what Mahindra could have done. And these facts came out when the two were working together. They were just staggered by where they were spending money, where customers didn't feel it themselves.
I think also the earthquake.
No, it was let's say the hurricanes or whatever. Obviously in the US, you have typhoons and hurricanes and whatever. So your plant has to withstand whatever a certain gale force. And they had that same specification here. So these sort of things just didn't make sense. And it's not just Ford. A lot of European companies do that as well. Volkswagen also, when they built Chakas, just unnecessarily loaded it with costs which didn't, kind of add value. And then finally, the plant was so expensive that the break-even would be about 100,000 cars for, Ford. But, don't forget, when they invested in the plant, and you're talking about the plant going on stream around 2010, 2011, their forecast for the Indian market was 7 million cars by 2020. So, we are nowhere near that. Of course, the pandemic struck, but even now, we're just 4.1 million in 24. So they completely got the potential of the Indian market wrong. So I think, they were kind of misled in a way by certain forecasts, which kind of, that's what triggered certain investments. So they got it wrong. And I think, that Sanand plant really was a millstone around their neck. Really a white elephant. They really couldn't make that work. If they didn't have Sanand and they just had the Chennai plant, which they still kept, they would have stayed on. But coming back to the Chennai plant, I think, that's where they didn't sell that. They had offers. I think JSW offered 100 million, then VinFast gave 150 million. Really, it's peanuts if you were to make your own plant. I think also what has happened that in Thailand, for Ford, there have been certain policies where it's kind of made Chinese EV imports a lot easier. So I think, from their point of view, they also want to look strategically at different production bases. And they've got India over here, which could be an export hub. Plus, you've got the whole supplier community already around.
Already developed.
So, you've got this, it is an asset. So I think there's been some thinking along here like, hey, listen, we're really not getting much for this plant. So why don't we just keep it and look at what we can do? So there's a lot of exports potentially out of it. And also, there will be, products for the domestic market as well.
And so that's one sign that they're headed back, the plant, they've gone back on selling it. And also one of their key executives
K. Hart came down, spoke to the Tamil Nadu officials, said that, look, we are coming, we are here to stay, we're coming back with a plan.
Right.
Yeah, so I think...
there are signs. But, also the, they are coming back, but how soon can they get that plant operational? There was this thing you were telling me actually the other day about the warm idle.
Yeah,
right?
So I think they've kept the plant on what they call a warm idle, which means they regularly service their machines, keep them running to a certain extent. So, they don't just, how the machines need to be lubricated. Or I don't know how it works in a plant. But at the turn of a switch, the plant is ready to go.
Right.
So I think clearly that plant will have to be rejigged for future products, clearly. But I think so, they've always had this ambition somehow there that, we could come back. Obviously, the fact that they got these offers for Chennai and they've said no to them clearly says that, look, if I'm keeping the plant, I'm obviously going to be making some products in it. So these are all the clear signs we've seen, we've seen patent images of the new Everest,
True.
of it in India and that sort of thing. So I think clearly it's all pointing to a definite comeback. Now, when that still is a question mark, because you have to have a full product strategy before you can operationalize a plant, because that's the efficient way to do it. One thing is clear, that the only ICE product they're going to have is the Endeavour.
Right.
So Endeavour and maybe Ranger they might evaluate, but Endeavour is the only ICE product they will have. So, if all Ford fans remember, there's going to be no EcoSport equivalent, no compact SUV coming back, nothing.
Not just foreseeable future.
Not in the foreseeable future. The only ICE product will be the Endeavour, and maybe some derivatives.
There you have some, there you have some masala though, right? On the Endeavour, the Everest masala.
That's right. So in fact, we just put the story out on our website that the Endeavour is likely to come back as the Everest. Now, Everest was the original name, but that Everest trademark was taken by some other party in India. I don't know who it was. So they clearly couldn't use it. But from what I understand, they've got that trademark back. And now it's much easier for them to launch it as an Everest. Don't forget, it complicates things when you have a global name and a different name in one market.
One brand.
You've got let's say toolings for, you have to redo in terms of your dies and certain tooling.
For the badges.
Just for embossing the badges everywhere. It just adds cost.
True.
And for the small volumes you have, it's very expensive.
I think even the tire cover was embossed, right, with the name.
Exactly.
Right.
So, all that, it costs money. Now, if you're going to bring it in as a CBU or import, which is also likely, because I don't think the plant will be operational for another 18 months as well, or maybe even a little more. You don't want to lose that time. You might want to bring in a limited amount of import. Yeah, don't forget, it might even be fairly attractive as an import with all the taxes, because the Fortuner's, almost 60 lakhs on?
Yeah, the top end. I mean, it's given them so much headroom to still be competitive with the CBU, right? I mean, they could import an Endeavour with all of the taxes, and thanks to the Fortuner raising the price, they still be competitive. Yeah, that's
exactly. And there's no other
surprising
competition there. I mean, Gloucester, limited competition.
Yeah, you have to find its feet.
Yeah, exactly. And, everything else is gone. I mean, you had the Alturas, which is gone, that typical body-on-frame 7-seater.
Yeah.
So Fortuner's ruling the roost. The only one that could really give it somewhat of a fight was the Endeavour. Mm-hmm. And that way, with the new Everest, with the new engines, probably it could give a fight to the Fortuner as well. Because don't forget, I mean, Endeavour had a strong fan following. Didn't quite have the absolute reliability of the Fortuner, which is bulletproof.
Still.
That's why people buy it. And but it was a more plush vehicle, much more comfortable, better appointed. The ride was better, all that sort of thing. The last one which we drove, and so I think it will definitely have a fan following, which Ford wants to, let's say, capture. But I think the plan initially could be, though it's not confirmed, they have to work it out. If it's too expensive, they might even not go the CBU way. But I think they could look at...
Fans are looking at the CBU.
And then they will definitely locally assemble it when they get their strategy right.
But so that's like the I would say the attractive with the Endeavour coming back as the Everest. But there's also this other sort of news about the skunk works, right? That we have just heard of.
That's right. So I think the main reason for that plant will be EVs.
Right.
And I think what Ford is working on is an affordable EV architecture, which, as you said, doing with a skunk works or a separate team, which is like a startup within Ford. It's nothing to do with the Ford mothership, so to say. And, Jim Farley, the CEO, said this to our Autocar UK team, that he's got this program in the works and it had to be done in a very unconventional way to kind of get the costs down. And that's what they're looking at. And from what I understand is that, it's one architecture with 3 body styles. So obviously there'll be a lot of export potential. And the EV policy as well, will place to that, because technically if they invest 500 million, which is nothing for a whole year, let's say a full new EV line and platform and the development and localization of all that to have multiple body styles. If you invest 500 million, you can import a fixed number of CBUs, about 8,000 at 15% duty. So that makes cars like the Marquis so much more attractive for this market to come in as CBU. So I think the EV policy is something that's also helped. And, that's good what the government in a way has done, because really encourages more investment and companies like Ford to come back. And also what people don't know about Jim Farley is no stranger to India. In fact, he supports an orphanage in Kerala. So they even personally has a
I didn't know
connect.
that. Okay.
Yeah, he has a connect with India, so I think...
That helps. That always helps.
Exactly. So I think, Ford coming back, but in a very different form. No EcoSport, that's for sure. Just, let's say EVs, which everyone is doing, and the good old Endeavour as the Everest.
True. Yeah. Although I do hope we've been talking about this as well, that EVs, there seems to be a slight shift. So maybe ICE will be longer, so Ford might have to relook at ICE as well, you think, for India? Or
no, I don't think they will relook at ICE. I mean, ICE, that ship has sailed, in 2024. Yeah. And what engines would they bring? They'd have to homologate all the engines, make them compliant to BS6, BS 6.2. They just don't have the engines. And the investment, again, would be huge. Right. So they just don't have the powertrain to do ICE other than the Endeavour. That Endeavour also will be more of a CKD kind of operation. Right. Because if you're going to bring products like the EcoSport, that's...
you've got to localize.
You've got to localize, and they don't want to make that mistake again or go down that route again, which just sucks money, and there's very low margins, and really no point in doing that. So I think no more, none of the small, fun, compact ICE Fords.
Yeah, but the funny part is, Hormazd, that would also mean that you could be looking at the big real Fords, as a lot of people call them, coming in perhaps. You think the Ranger being on the same platform as the...
The Ranger, depending on what the market is for pickups, that would be quite an expensive pickup. So, I think...
Fully lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but it's on the same platform.
It is on the same platform.
It is on the same platform.
But again, exports, I mean, the Ranger, the key market is Thailand, which is a pickup market. So, it really depends. But I think EVs is the main play. Clearly, that's where the bulk of their production capacity will go. And Ford seems very excited. They seem to have cracked what they call a low-cost, affordable EV play, which brands like Volkswagen have really been struggling with. So I think they're talking about bringing the ID.4 here at about 55-60 lakhs. Who's going to buy it? So I think Ford think they have something exciting. And clearly, don't forget, I think India is a market you can't ignore anymore. We've moved again, as I've said before, to more profitable segments.
Correct.
It's easier to make money. It's not always being at the low end, mass, low volume, low margin segment, high volume, low margin segment. So I think things have changed, and Ford obviously will come in with a lot more of a measured approach than throwing big money.
So measured, but still fun.
I think still fun. I think Fords are inherently fun, and I think all of us who've driven Fords, we've enjoyed them. They do stand for something, and and I think they're very engaging to drive, and that DNA is something I think which with EVs you don't always see that carried over, because EVs are so one-dimensional.
Correct.
But at least it'll be good to have the Ford name back. Yeah,
that's true. That's right. In fact, one-dimensional, like we've both driven the Mach-E, and I think. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a Ford, yes, but it's also not a Ford, right? So you think it will translate into the low-cost EV, or do you think the fun to drive will get further diluted in that low-cost EV platform?
Well, I think I personally think it'll be diluted because clearly it's very, very difficult to differentiate in sheer kind of performance unless you have more and more power, which is what they're doing. But I think it's. They are going to play on their strengths, which is, they will have a certain Ford design, which is what people like. And just the way they drive, ride and handling is something they excel at. So one can expect that to be
retail
an edge. So all those sort of things. And, I think clearly the Everest is going to be something, when it comes, what people will be looking forward to.
True.
Yeah, great. So I think that's it from us. Thanks, Sergius. I think,
thanks, Hormazd.
As I said, Ford haven't really confirmed this, but we are sure that they're coming. That's why we've dedicated a whole podcast to it. We have been talking to a lot of people in the industry, and it is very exciting. I think some of the suppliers also are kind of, in a way, gearing up for Ford's return. And I think it's something that all enthusiasts will be looking forward to.
True.
Absolutely. So thanks very much for joining us, and see you again next week.